Welcome back. The Institute for Public Policy Research has raised concerns regarding the transparency and credibility of the Electoral Commission of Namibia's conduct during the emergency procurement tender for ballot paper printing. We now dive deeper into this issue with the IPPR Research Associate, Frederico Links. Frederico, good evening and thank you so much for joining us here on the Daily Roundup.
Good evening, Nina, and thanks for having me.
Frederico, let's get right into it. I want to talk about the ECN's procurement processes and how they align or misalign with the Public Procurement Act's rules.
Well, I mean, it's not. I don't think this is a case of a misalignment necessarily. It's more, what we try to do here is look at, the various aspects of this controversy, and try and establish what actually happened that led to the ballot paper printing tender being. The method being applied was emergency procurement, because the initial open international bidding process was cancelled 2 days before the deadline of 9 October. The cancellation happened on the 7th of October, and so this was a very sudden and unexpected occurrence. And then the ECN announced that the ballot printing contractor would be sourced via the emergency procurement method. And then a week later, it was announced that the South African company had been awarded the contract. And so we went and looked at, what were the aspects, or what contributed to this emergency procurement transaction. But I mean, we're not saying there was anything untoward in this. We just looked at what three specific aspects: the timelines and deadlines that were set by the ECN themselves. Based on the annual procurement plan and the electoral calendar, the cost of the contract that the ECN had announced, I think it was on the 17th of October, when they announced the Renform CC as the company that was chosen, and then also what the estimated cost had been in the ECN's annual procurement plan. And then we also looked at the issue of integrity, the integrity of the contractor that has been awarded this contract. So these were the aspects we looked at. But the process itself, in terms of being a emergency procurement action, I don't see that specific process there was anything wrong with that. But the question was, how did it come to being an emergency, and what contributed to this, and what are the critical questions here that remain unanswered?
So the shifting from a competitive procurement process to an emergency tender doesn't necessarily impact the trust in the Electoral Commission?
Well, I mean, I think it does. It has created an issue of trust, and the earlier segment on what the political parties said happened in Johannesburg, when they were supposed to be observing the totality of the processes involved in the production and printing of the ballot papers, certainly speak to this issue of trust. And it hasn't been explained to the voting public why the specifics, I'm talking about the specifics, why the initial open international bidding process was so suddenly cancelled. the ECN in its statement on 7 October simply says various factors contributed to the decision to cancel that open international bidding process. Now, they never explained what these various factors were. They still haven't explained what these various factors were. So that's one of the issues. And then, another question that hasn't been another issue that hasn't been explained is when the ECN announced, Renform CC as the company that had been given the contract. It's said that a comprehensive evaluation process had been applied and had guided the decision. Now, it was never explained what this comprehensive evaluation process actually encompassed. We'd like to know. The voting public needs to know, because of the concerns that have arisen around Renform CC and the allegations that are out there around Renform CC. Would if these were taken into account during this comprehensive evaluation process, then this needs to be stated, and it needs to be made clear why then, if these concerns were there, these allegations were there, why then were they ignored and the decision was made to still go ahead with Renform?
Would we be having this conversation, Frederico, just to interject there, would we be having this conversation if the ECN had opted to go with someone else other than Renform CC, whose integrity or character now has become so contentious? Had they opted for another service provider, would we be having this conversation today, for them just simply moving to a emergency procurement process?
I think we would, yes. I mean, if you look back at previous elections where we've had ballot papers, in every single one of them, the company that was awarded the tender became an issue of contention. The ballot paper printing tender is always a contentious and controversial issue. In the past, I think back in 2009, it was I think maybe 2004, it was the awarding of the contract to the ruling party-owned Namprint that got the tender, and that was a big political controversy at the time. So this tender is a controversial, is a sensitive topic, it's a sensitive issue. So it would have been, no matter who was awarded this contract, I think it would have been a controversy at the end of the day.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, Frederico, the ECN has not come out and given a full explanation, in terms of what the process was, what necessitated this change, what criteria they looked at, etc. What do you think their next move should be? We've also touched on the fact that, them and representatives of the different political parties have returned today from South Africa. Political parties have raised, of course, concern about how they have perceived the proceedings there in Johannesburg. But now that they are back and the process has been completed, what does the ECN need to do next concerning this matter?
Well, I think the questions, I was hoping that they would address these questions and some others during the media briefing today on the return of this large delegation and the ballot papers from South Africa. That these questions would be answered, that they would give a full accounting for the decision that they took, firstly on the cancellation, and then on Renform, and then also on how on the big difference between the estimated cost of the contract in the annual procurement plan and the actual contract awarded. There's a big difference. There's over 100% increase in the actual cost of this contract from what was estimated in the annual procurement plan to what is actually costing us. So this needs to be explained. Why is there such a big difference? So there are some other questions that need to be answered as well around this ballot printing tender. And I was hoping the ECN would take the opportunity and actually do this at today's briefing. But perhaps this will still be done, and hopefully they will see that this is in the interest of restoring or drawing back some of the controversy, drawing back some of the mistrust. But unfortunately, I think this whole process, this whole incident, this episode has cast a pall of suspicion over the integrity of the upcoming elections. And I don't think there's anything they can do at this point.
Thank you. We appreciate your time with us this evening, Frederico. Of course, we'll be engaging you more as the days and weeks continue towards election day.
Even if they try and play open cards now, or dispel these clouds of suspicion.
Well, we appreciate your time so much. Thank you for joining us this evening.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Nina.
On that note,